Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. And we are done with the spooky season, which means we handed out all of our candies. Maybe we kept a few back for ourselves, maybe in the candy bar selection category. So this week on the show, our top 5 candy bars. Rodrigo, you're a notorious candy bar eater.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have at your number 5?
To be fair, I'm a notorious eater of anything that's near me. So candy bars, only some of the things that I like to eat. But my number 5 is Snickers. Snickers, I think, has like there's like a high budget for like Snickers advertisement. I assume that it's either a very popular candy bar or that they're really trying to make it happen. So it's hard to go through, like, certainly Halloween times, but it's hard to go through and like not ever come across like a bite-sized Snickers or like a Snickers in a grocery store or whatever. So I usually, like I said, it's popular enough that I don't ever have to buy a Snickers. It just like seems to materialize places.
They just appear.
Yeah. So, but when it does, I'm happy to eat it.
Yeah, Snickers bar is certainly so popular that it is my number 1 candy bar.
Whoa.
Yeah, introduced in the 1930s, called the Marathon Bar if you live in the UK up until about 1990. So only the olds know about it. But this thing is so popular that it is, what did I read earlier? It makes $3 billion a year, just that candy bar.
Wow.
For the Mars Company, in addition to all the other candies that they make. But Snickers, $3 billion. There's something about, not the little, those little tiny square ones that are the size of like a Hershey's Kiss, those bites. Those are no good. Yeah, those are no good.
Those are wrong.
The minis or the midges or whatever they call them, those are good. And what I've noticed is, fun size, whatever they're called. I've noticed that you can still get kind of what's called a quote unquote full size Snickers bar today. That's probably 4 inches or so, 4.5 inches. But I've noticed that if you get the extra large package of the Snickers bar, they're actually the fun size Snickers bar or the Snickers mini bars, like 3 of them in a package. And so you can just pop one of those whole things in your mouth and chew on that for a little bit. It tastes so good, chocolate and nougat and peanuts. Ooh. Oh, Snickers bar, my number 1. Matthew, did you have a Snickers bar on your list? I'm guessing no, because of peanuts.
I don't have a problem necessarily with peanuts. I didn't have a Snickers bar because of the problem with the square ones. There's a textural issue.
They don't have as many nuts in it. I don't think you can pack as many peanuts in that little 1 inch by 1 inch square like you can in a fun size or full size or massive size.
They have like the little shattered ones that are little tiny wedges that stick right into my ever increasing gum line and just fill me with hate. So
what do you have for number 5?
My number 5 is a bar that is actually a little bit contentious in my workplace because we have a candy jar. And it's contentious already because there's one lady who's worked in our company for 52 years. And she says it is her job.
Sure she wasn't there when you were born?
Well, I wasn't born there, but she was literally hired about 6 to 8 months after I was born, which means about 9 months after you. But the thing about it is she will not let anyone else fill the candy jar. And my boss and I happen to have a shared love for the Twix bar. And a Twix bar is shortbread covered in caramel, covered in chocolate. And she will not let anyone fill that candy jar, but she doesn't buy the packages with very many Twix very often. So you have that problem with not enough Twix bars. And of course, my boss and I will go back and we'll like steal Twix bars, and depending on who gets there first. Since my chair has wheels on it and her office is next door, usually I get more Twix than my boss, but neither of us have the tenure, first of all, because we're exactly the same age, to tell this woman who's been working there our entire life, could you get more Twix, please? So you kind of have that thing where you've seen the commercials where they're like the left side and the right side of the Twix. I'm going to tell you a secret. I hate that commercial. But more importantly, either side of a Twix bar is the same. And they don't suffer from the problem that you have with miniaturization with other bars. Like a Three Musketeers is overpowered by the nougat if it's too small. And the Snickers doesn't have enough peanuts to balance out the caramel if it's too small. But you get a Twix and you still get the cookie. You still get the caramel that sticks in your teeth. You still get the chocolate. You still get the stink eye from Jill, the weight management nurse. And most importantly, you get my number 5. You get a big crunchy chocolate, and you can crunch it, and it won't stick in your teeth and make you cry.
There you go. My number 5 is a candy that has been off of the shelves for 40 years. But this past March, it was back. It was back to celebrate the grand ballpark opening and the first day of baseball for the Reggie Bar. Introduced in 1978. After in 1976, Reggie Jackson said, if I played in New York, they'd name a candy bar after me. And then the Standards Brand Company said, yeah, sure, we can create a bar for you. It won't necessarily be a bar, but we'll go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where we can get this what's called a bun bar, which is, now check this out and see if this sounds a little bit more like my number 1. There's 3 different kinds that you can get. I think vanilla one was the first one that started out. Is like got a little puck in the middle that can either be vanilla, or you can get maple, or you could get caramel, or caramel, which was the one that was added last. And then that is covered with unsalted peanuts, and then that is covered in chocolate. And that is the Reggie Bar. And on the day that Reggie Jackson played, they were introducing the Reggie Bar. They were handing them out to everyone at the Giant Stadium. I think it's Giant Stadium. If I'm wrong, hey, I'm not a baseball guy. No, Yankee Stadium. Sorry, Yankee Stadium. He hit a home run, and when he rounded right field, people just started throwing the Reggie Bar out on the field, and he thought it was because everybody hated the Reggie Bar. Turns out they were just so excited they were throwing the bars at him in celebration, and so the throwing of the Reggie Bar at Yankee Stadium has been a thing for a long time, and now it can finally come back. In fact, Reggie Jackson was at Yankee Stadium when they brought the Reggie Bar back this past March or whatever. So you can still get the Reggie Bars. You can even go on to Amazon and get them. They're like $56 for 25 of them. I don't know if I love the Reggie Bar that much, and that is why it is at my number 5.
Reggie's got to be like 103 at this.
He's getting up there. I don't know. Let me see if I can find out Reggie Jackson's age. He is currently 77 years old, and still looks pretty good. Still looks pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah, Mr. October, looking really, really good. So there you go. All right, Rodrigo, we are moving up to our number 4. What do you have for number 4?
My number 4 is Three Musketeers bar. And the reason why I like a Three Musketeers is because it's like made of foam. It's like we talked about a Snickers. A Snickers has like different layers.
Yeah.
And you bite into it, and they all have a different texture, and that's part of the eating experience. I feel like a Three Musketeers bar is like a mousse that somehow got covered in chocolate.
Hey, what are you talking about?
Yucky.
It's not unpleasant, and it's definitely a sugar delivery system, which is usually what I'm looking for when I come across a Three Musketeers. So it's not bad. It's a fine candy bar, but I think it's interesting because most candy bars tend to have some sort of like structural support ingredient, like a cookie or something else. But I feel like Three Musketeers somehow doesn't, and it's just mostly empty space with like some sugar packed in there.
Yeah. Did you know it used to come in 3 different flavors?
No way.
Strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla for the Three Musketeers.
Oh, is that what it's called? Three Musketeers?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Matthew, what do you have for number 4? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You're okay. For those who were listening and got confused like I did, I believe Rodrigo means mousse as in whipped egg white rather than mousse as in the ungulate.
No,
because he said a mousse covered in chocolate. And I'm just like, whoa.
I would definitely take one of those for my Christmas gift if somebody wanted to give me a mousse covered chocolate.
Hey,
like an Easter bunny. Easter bunnies are rabbits covered in chocolate.
No, they're not.
Yeah, that's why they're called the chocolate rabbits. So what do you have for your number 4, Matthew?
I'm frightened. Okay, so my number 4, I didn't realize.
Not as frightened as the rabbit.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize it was still being made somewhere in the universe because, to my knowledge, it disappeared from the racks of Beloit and/or Hayes and/or Topeka, Kansas, sometime in the mid-1990s. But apparently they didn't actually stop making, my number 4, the O. Henry bar until 2019 in the U.S. Apparently they still make them in other countries. They're made by Ferrara, the guys who make the red race cars, right? Yeah, those guys. Ferrero Rocher. Yeah, those guys. But the O. Henry bar is in some ways like a Snickers in a lot of ways, because it has some nougat, it has some caramel, it has some peanuts, and it has like a chocolate coating, but it's fudgy as well. There's like, when I remember eating it, there was like a layer of fudge above the nougat to offset the sweetness of the nougat, and of course to avoid nougat deficiency syndrome, where your elbows grow out and your fingers turn green for some reason. But if you got the O. Henrys that I used to get, they were weirdly shaped for a candy bar. There's a terrible joke in Caddyshack about a Baby Ruth in a pool. And you know how the Baby Ruth candy bar was shaped? And O. Henry is actually narrower and more tapered and would have made that joke even grosser, but nobody knew what an O. Henry bar was at the time. But I remember eating the O. Henry bars as a child because, well, I grew up in the 1920s, and which is to say Kansas, anywhere between about 1970 and 1984. But I also would go and I would get the candies that no one else buys because they're the ones you're like, hey, what's going on over here? Nobody's eating this. Is it terrible? You kind of have to know that. And then, of course, the most important part is when you get to the end of an O. Henry bar, you find out that it sold its platinum watch fob to buy its wife some combs, but the wife shaved her head to buy the bar a watch for his watch fob or something. Nonetheless, the only candy with an ironic ending, the O. Henry bar, is my number 4. They don't make them anymore, and probably get used to hearing that from me.
My number 4 also contains some kind of a caramel nougat covered in peanuts kind of thing. It's the Payday bar, and I have one of them every day on payday. I go in after school. Thomas comes out like a 40-year-old drunk after a hard day's work. He's like, "Dad, can we go get what's called essentially a slushy?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we'll go get a slushy." And so we go down there, and he gets his slushy bar or his slushy drink, and I get a Payday bar, and we go to town. So, Payday bars are interesting in that the nougat caramel is a weird texture taste combo, but I like the fact that the peanuts are on the outside and not on the inside. So that's my number 4. Rodrigo, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is one that I hope that when you say candy bars, we're also allowed to include just like chocolate bars.
Yeah, it's a bar. It's got the bar in there, right?
Yeah, right. It's a rectangular prism of chocolate.
Yeah. Okay, go for it. I know what it is.
So it's actually the cookies and cream, and I think it's like Nestle that puts it out. It's technically not chocolate because it's made of white chocolate, and I guess there's no cocoa in white chocolate. But I prefer my chocolate at either extreme, either to have almost no sugar and be bitter, or to have nothing but sugar to the point where it like gets rid of the chocolate, like white chocolate. And the cookies and cream bars do put back some amount of actual chocolate because there's like little crunchy cookie-like pieces, which are chocolate flavored. There's something about white chocolate that I really enjoy and pretty much triggers a migraine immediately. So I have to, like, if I'm, like, I have to, like, so many things have to come together for me to have a white chocolate bar nowadays. And it has to be like, do I have anything else to do? And also, like, do I have anything that I need to do tomorrow? And is it going to be worth it? And no, the answer is no, it's not worth it. But it's hard to argue that at the point where you're facing down a white chocolate bar at like a store checkout. So that's why it's, even though I like it a lot, that's why it's all the way down at my number 3, because it's kind of the nuclear option.
All right. Matthew, what do you have for your number 3?
My number 3 is a rare appearance in my enjoyment list of dark chocolate. I don't necessarily have a problem with dark chocolate, but I prefer a milk chocolate, or if I absolutely have to, I'll go, someplace weird where people are like, what's this? It's somewhere between the dark chocolate and the milk chocolate. It's like, I don't know, a Toyota chocolate. But my number 3, the Mounds bar, is literally coconut covered in dark chocolate. Now,
I can top it with my number 3, but go ahead if you got some more to say.
Can you? All right. So a lot of people prefer the counterpart bar to a Mounds, but I don't, for 2 important reasons. One, Mounds bar is perfect because shut your hole. The super, super sweetness of like chocolate in this, I don't know what the concoction, it's like sugar and
it's coconut, shredded coconut.
Yeah. But there's something gummy in there to hold that coconut together. And then they cover the whole thing with the dark chocolate. The dark chocolate has just a little bit of a bite, and I don't know if you even call it a sourness. I think the kids today call it umami. But whatever it is, that counterbalance of like your dark chocolate to your super sweet shredded coconut is really good. And nothing in a Mounds bar will, once again, shatter and stab you right in the gums. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but in my 50s, I've had some teeth issues. And, I have a lot more gum than I used to have. And so now I'm like trying to keep things from, again, stabbing me really, really badly. The only problem you do have with the Mounds is if you have oddly spaced teeth like I do, the Mounds is either a blessing in that you're, saving snacks for later, maybe hours from now. You're going to be sitting there and you run your tongue over something and bam, you're going to have, a little more Mounds. Or a horrifying torture machine devised by Jigsaw. So you're just sitting there in the middle of the night. You had a Mound 17 hours ago and a little puppet runs into the room and goes, I want to play a game. And, that's never a good thing. And this is important. The Mounds is over 100 years old and originally sold for a nickel.
Yeah.
And I know this because in 1920, everything sold for a nickel.
Yeah.
Cigarette was a nickel. So a house was a nickel.
My number 3 it improves upon the Mounds by adding 2 almonds onto each bar. So you've got your creamy coconut shredded up with 2 almonds on top, covered in that chocolate. Oh, it is so good. And it's also because now the Mounds bar came out before the Almond Joy bar, but the 2 of them together created a fantastic, probably one of the best theme songs for any candy that's out there. From wherever the company was still Peter Paul, I believe. Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't.
At the time,
yeah. That was such a great ad campaign slogan to let people get on board for both of these candies. Which really, the only difference is one's got nuts and the other one doesn't, but they're still delicious.
It's a very memorable ad campaign for 2 kind of nothing candy bars.
I mean, they are really, but you can look at it. You can look at it in a healthy, sense. Excellent. Almonds are good for you. You need to eat almonds every day. Chocolate is good for you. You need to eat a little chocolate every once in a while. And of course, coconut is a fruit. So you get your fruit intake there too. So this is like the perfect health snack for people. So just keep that in mind next time you're picking up your Almond Joy or your Mounds. I don't know. It's a nut. It's some kind of a nut, right? So it's a byproduct of a nut. So
no, it's fruit.
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know. The nut is on the outside.
It's like a stone
just
fruit.
Trust me.
It's like
tell your doctors that it's okay to have an Almond Joy or a Mounds bar because it's essentially got all the things that your body needs. So there you go.
If you hear a silent screaming in the distance, it's actually Jill, my weight management nurse.
No, you don't have to eat. You don't have to eat them. You don't have to eat a truckload. You just have to have like one little one, like once a week or every other week. You can have a little. It's like the cat can have a little pepperoni. You can have a little Mounds bar, Matthew.
The cat cannot have a little pepperoni.
He can.
So,
my couch is barely surviving as it is.
A coconut is a droop.
There you go. So droop is, part of what happens to your stomach if you eat too many Mounds bars, as I have found out over the years. It droops down. That's okay. That's okay. Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 2? I'm talking about my
my number 2 is a Crunch Bar, which is a chocolate bar with like puffed rice infused in it.
Oh, yeah.
That's very much a texture thing. Again, like I kind of had trouble coming up with 5 whole candy bars because I don't usually seek out chocolate. Because milk chocolate is like very sweet. And again, if I want like maximum sweetness, then I might just go for white chocolate and die for a couple days. But most milk chocolate, just, it's just not necessarily what I'm into. But I like the texture of a Crunch Bar. It kind of offsets that sweetness just by pure mouthfeel. So definitely, if I see a Crunch Bar kicking around, I'll go after it.
Yeah, it's the portable version of the Cocoa Pebbles is what I always thought of as a kid, right? It's like you can't take a bowl of Cocoa Pebbles with you because that makes too much of a mess. But if you got a Crunch Bar, it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same ingredient. It's like how Taco Bell just flips the ingredients.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Just rotates them.
Yeah, they turned it over, and it's a Chihuahua Lupa.
instead of meat, cheese, and lettuce, it's lettuce, cheese, and meat.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The weird thing, though, is if you try to debate the difference between the Hershey Crackle and the Nestle Crunch, because the Crunch and the Crackle, I mean, they have this weird symbiotic existence, like Goofy and Pluto, where they're both dogs, but they're also somehow completely different. Like a Crunch Bar wears pants and has a job, and the Crackle Bar just chases its tail in the corner. I don't know, but I've never really figured out what the difference is. But there's a very
they're different brands trying to do the same thing. But I will say that I see Crunch Bars around. But it's rare to see Crackle by itself. I think nowadays,
you get
Crackle bars kind of exist in like the fun size, like Halloween bags.
Yep, Crackle bars and the yeller ones only exist in those variety packs.
What are we on? Number 2? Matthew, what do you have for number 2?
My number 2 is a bar that no longer exists. But, and this is important, I want you to understand something, Ladles and Jelly Spoons. People out there listening to me, you may say, does Matthew have a deeply held conviction about candy bars? And the question is, does the Pope go to the restroom in the woods? Of course, Matthew has a highly, highly contentious belief. My number 2 is the late lamented Mars bar, the namesake of the Mars half of the M&M Mars candy conglomerate. And that Mars bar, when I was young, I'm gonna put on my Steven voice. They were better when I was a kid, but
yeah, they were.
They were nougat and almonds, covered in milk chocolate.
So it's, to me, whenever I had a Mars bar, I always thought it was the, even though I think it came out before the Snickers bar, I always thought of it as the poorer cousin of the Snickers bar because it had almonds in it and not peanuts.
Dare you?
No, that's how I thought about it. I was like, well, would you rather have a Snickers bar or would you rather have a Mars bar? And it's like, well, if there's no Snickers bar, I guess I'll have a Mars bar just because they're essentially the same the same bar except for the nut.
Yep. They're very similar, except that at a certain point, and this was the point when I was eating Mars bars, the late lamented Mars bars, they didn't have the caramel element, and that was what differentiated them a little bit from your Snickers. Now, since about 2000, they have in fact created something akin to a Mars bar, a Frankenstein horrendous travesty of a Mars bar that they call the Snickers Almond.
Yeah.
Or, as anyone with sense calls it, death in a baggie. No, the Snickers Almond is just different. It's not as good. And I think part of it is, chocolate from the M&M side of the universe and chocolate from the Mars side of the universe used to be different. Mm-hmm. Back in the day in Slough, England, when Forrest Mars invented the candy, you actually had that Mars chocolate that tasted a little different, and I feel like kind of paired better. Rodrigo got to say mouthfeel, which, by the way, ooh. But I'm going to tell you that chocolate pairs better with the umami of the almond, whereas you got kind of a sweeter. And I always think of, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but I always think of like M&M chocolate as slightly waxier in texture. It has more of a biting into a candle taste than, biting into, I don't know, a really, really old piece of meat taste. It's a different sort of textural thing, and they're both fine for their own thing. But the Mars bar, as it existed previous to about 2008. And I think you can probably get it still in Australia. And the reason for that is because the Mars company went there to collect all the old Mars bars, but the various fauna of Australia just killed them all dead. And then they're out there and they're like spiders are like, I want a Mars bar. And they had to keep making them because I don't know if you know this, the spiders in Australia are 19 feet wide.
So
one of them
from
fought
Boston,
Nicholas
apparently.
Here you can get you can get right now, Matthew, full size Mars bars, a 4-pack, imported from Canada, for $18.
Canadian Mars bars.
Canadian Mars bars. There's another one where you can get a single Mars bar for like $12. So I was looking out for you going for the 4-pack.
Bootleg Canadian Mars bars.
Hey, there's no. It contains no peanuts. The Mars bars contains no peanuts. So
see, there you go. I feel like that's going to be it's either going to be one of those situations where it's like this is so much better, like the bottles of Coke that come from the Mexican bottling plants with the real sugar. Or it's going to be one of those, hey, this is not a transformer, it's a transmorpher. And I can't decide which.
It's a GoBot.
But I feel like I'm gonna have like a watch with little hands sticking off of the side of it in my candy, and I don't want that.
My number 2 is one that I guarantee you can never buy one where it's not already broken up by the time you get it to the counter. It's just physically impossible to pick one of these things up and move it 2 feet without it breaking. It is the Butterfinger bar. It's a peanut butter, hardcore, crispy center surrounded by something that is chocolatey coating. Again, like Rodrigo said, it doesn't contain any cocoa butter, so it's technically not chocolate. But there's something about biting into this. This is one of those that Matthew always talks about things setting his teeth on edge. If I bite into a Butterfinger and hits like a back tooth or something, I get that little tingly kind of thing. Doesn't happen with any other candy bar except for the Butterfinger. And it may be because it's got that chocolatey coating, radioactive coating.
It could be all of the old mercury fillings.
I don't have any mercury fillings. I didn't have my first cavity until I was 33.
After listening to today's list, I do not believe you for a second.
No, seriously, I did not get my first cavity until I was like 33, and I've only had.
Stephen had only ever had one of each of these candy bars.
And then his
tune into the Major Spoilers Cut Podcast pre-show, kids, and I'll talk all about the poor days when Stephen didn't get candy. So that's my number 2, the Butterfinger. Of course, my number 1 was the Snickers bar, but let's get to Rodrigo's number 1.
My number 1, and again, hoping to not be stretching the definition too much, but my number 1 is the rare in the United States. But you can find it. the Bubulubu, which is spelled Bubulubu, right? This is I guess the best way to explain it is it's a bed of marshmallow, which then is covered in raspberry filling, which then is covered in chocolate. That's probably how it's made.
I have had something like this before, but it was not a Bubulubu. But I definitely have had a candy like this.
It sounds
back
like
in the 70s or 80s.
No,
Squanch, that character from Rick and Morty.
No, Sponge is
Sponge.
It's a marshmallow. It's like
cake.
A cookie, then a marshmallow, like a giant soft marshmallow on top of it.
No,
then like sprinkles and coconut. That's
definitely in the late 70s, early 80s. I had something like this because it's pulley, it's chewy because of the marshmallow.
By the way, since we're talking, since Sponge came up, every once in a while, I see people bring it up, like they'll end up at a Mexican store, or sometimes these actually make it into like gas stations and stuff. And they'll look at it and they'll be like, haha, this is really funny that there's a candy or a cookie or whatever named Sponge. And I'm like, yeah, that's Mexicans like making fun of you. Like, Sponge is literally supposed to be something that you see in a comic book or something that you see in like an American like comedy show.
Yeah,
like to us, when Americans go like pow or zoom, it sounds like sponge. That's why the sponge is called that.
Interesting. Anything else you want to say about the Bubulubu?
The Bubulubu, yes. If you have the opportunity to get a Bubulubu, I would strongly recommend it because I think the Bubulubu represents the fundamental difference between like Mexican candy and American candy. Like really, it's not like nothing illustrates it better than a Bubulubu versus a Butterfinger. Like a Butterfinger tries to get a savoriness into it. Whereas the Bubulubu is like, there's nothing salty or savory about a Bubulubu. It's like chocolate, and then how do you brighten that chocolate? You put marmalade on it, right? Yep. Like that's the fundamental difference between like what a Mexican picks up at the store and I think an American picks up at the store, like a Reese's cup or something like that, right? That's going to have that like peanutty, savory stuff.
Little known fact, Grupo Bimbo that actually makes the Bubulubu has a factory here nearby where I live. So you can, in fact, get the Bubulubu and Gancitos and Sponges.
I'm almost positive.
If you go to the east side of town.
I'm positive that I got this in a Halloween candy back in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, Bubulubu has been around for a long time. It hasn't always belonged to Bimbo, but the entirety of bread didn't always belong to Bimbo. Look it up, kids. All your bread is Mexican.
Now, is it a raspberry? Because the ones that I'm seeing that you can get on Amazon are all strawberry filling.
It's strawberry, I think is what it is. Yeah, it's strawberry.
Yeah. They're so good.
All right. There you go. All right,
Matthew, really what it is it's sweet, tangy gel, I think is really what it is.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And
Matthew, what do you got for number one?
Unlike the Butterfinger, which is basically like the ruler that a nun uses to smack you on the knuckles, only made of broken glass.
Yeah, you don't. When you bite into a candy bar, you don't want to you don't want to describe a candy bar as sharding.
Yeah,
right. When you bite into it, but that's kind of what the Butterfinger
especially if you don't enunciate well, you definitely don't want to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Stephen Francis Schleicher.
Matthew, what do you have for number one?
Stephen's saucy today.
I know.
I've been up since 3 a.m. So.
So my number one is a bar that I loved in my youth. And it's very important that I share this to you because this is, in fact, this is high praise for me. In October of 2020, it was named the worst candy bar in the world by some dudes on the internet. And that is, my friends, the Zero Bar. So
I see this in stores, but I don't see anyone ever picking it up.
You know what? That's because I don't see it. The Zero Bar is wonderful because it is chocolate fudge, but it's white chocolate fudge. Now, Is it a candy bar? Yes, it is. If you want to fight me, I'll fight you.
I mean, it's a bar chocolate, and it's candy.
White chocolate fudge. So you start with the nougat, right? Again, nougat deficiency syndrome is a huge problem. Nobody wants to grow hair out their ears. So if you get the nougat and then you take like some peanut and like some caramel and you kind of swoosh it all together, you get a very sweet center, but then you cover it with the white chocolate fudge. And if you've ever had the white chocolate, it has kind of a little bite to it where it's not just sweet, it's sweet and not exactly tart, but there's something going on there. Again, there's probably a phrase for it, but I stopped watching Chopped regularly, so I can't tell you. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't melt. This was one of the selling points when I was young, because you would go, let's say you're me, and you're going, and you're like, oh, I got to go on my paper route. You grab the Zero Bar, you throw it in your paper bag, so that if you need a snack, you need some sudden carbohydrate energy. You're like, oh, I'm halfway home, and I'm gonna fall over. Weirdly, I don't have diabetes. But more importantly, you could get this bar and it wouldn't melt the same way as a chocolate bar. And it's white. It is like this weird white icing bar. It kind of looks like something that you would go and get in a store if you were going to buy a cookie. But more importantly, it tastes weirdly good. It should not. But it does. If you describe the taste, if you say to somebody, so peanuts, caramel, and nougat covered with white chocolate, everybody's going to have a look on their face, like a dog listening to a flute solo. It's just like, what? But something about the Zero Bar just like becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And I swear to you, I don't eat a lot of chocolate anymore, except when I'm, trying to fight my boss for the Twix bars at work. But if there were Zero Bars, all of the 2022 to 23 weight loss would be gone. if she would bring Zero Bars and throw them in the little candy dish, I would literally just move my desk back and I would work at her desk and just eat Zero Bars. And I'd be like, hey, how can I help you? Let me transfer you, blah, 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 blah. So in a way, it's good that Zero Bars are discontinued. In another way, it's bad because, what's cooler than absolute zero?
There you go. All right. Yeah. That wraps it up for this show. Thank you, everybody, for downloading and checking us out this week. What are your top 5 candy bars? I did a quick search. This is one of the bad things about using a Google search when you type in best candy bars, and the first things are all sponsored. There's the Negro bar, the Hungarian sweets variation. There is also something called an Owie Idaho Spud chocolate candy. And
okay, you're making this up.
No, I'm dead serious. Just do a search for like best candy bars and see what comes up in your search results.
I am not going to search Idaho Spud chocolate candy.
No,
because it's going to take me straight to CanadianSexActs.org, and then I'll have to know what an old King Clancy is.
That's on you and your search engine, buddy.
Yeah, that's when it gets to look at your cookies.
We're talking about candy, not cookies.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can share your top 5 candy bars over on our Discord server. You can find a link to the Discord server. You can join for free, too. You can find that in the show notes for this very episode. You can come over, say howdy to everyone. And I swear that there is a candy bar here called the Goose Poo Poo Candy Bar. And I'm seriously not kidding you. Maybe you've had it. Let us know over in the Major Spoilers Top 5 Discord server.
Please,
thank you. And remember, everybody loves a list.
This podcast is copyright 2023 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.